Welcome to the Sports Perspective TV viewers and subscribers. As always, thank you for tuning in. And if this is your first time coming across the channel, or you haven't subscribed to the channel as yet, we would definitely appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. Now, as you can tell from the thumbnail, we'll be discussing Nicholas Pooran and Chris Gayle, as to which of them is the greatest T20 batsman that has represented the West Indies. So let me make that clear distinction. This is not an overall. This is not comparing them, in their overall T20 career, including franchise T20. Even though I will mention their stats in franchise T20s, this is just more looking at their performance, as in West Indian colors, in West Indies colors, right? So I want to make that clear distinction. And there's a reason why. No, while I'll mention their stats, it would be unfair to make the comparison as for their overall T20 stats at the current moment. But as far as their appearances and their performances for the West Indies, there is enough data there. Fair enough that the comparison can be made from that standpoint, and a conclusion can be drawn, or whether or not you think none is better or they're equal, right? So before I do it, so I'll definitely like for you to share your thoughts in the comment section, either after watching the video, or preferably after you watch the video, as to which of these batsmen you think is the greatest West Indian T20 player, and that's just from the standpoint of their performances for the West Indies. All right, and I'll be sharing their stats, of course, and a few other observations that I've made in making points for both players, to help you in your in deciding which of them you think is the greatest West Indian T20 player, right? So Nicholas Pooran. So I'll start by saying, so recently Nicholas Pooran he passed Chris Gayle as far in terms of runs scored for the West Indies in T20 cricket, right? So he actually, so as far as it relates to the runs that were scored, he achieved that mark during the T20, the recently concluded T20 World Cup, where he became the highest run scorer for West Indies in T20 cricket, right? And in the series against between them and South Africa, right, after the first T20, he surpassed Chris Gayle as far as it relates to boundaries hit in T20 cricket as well, right? Now, both of these records, Nicholas Pooran, he's played more innings, because I'm not even going to talk about games, because we're comparing their batting, right? So the comparison is really it has to be done in terms of innings that the batsmen have played. Now, Nicholas Pooran, he's played more innings than Chris Gayle in T20 International for the West Indies, right? And so I'll say for him to surpass Chris Gayle in that regard, as far as runs scored and boundaries hit, it took more innings for him to do that, right? So I'll say that, but you also have to keep in mind that Nicholas Pooran, based on where he batted for the West Indies, in his career, especially at the beginning of his career, Chris Gayle would have more opportunities to face more balls than Nicholas Pooran did, considering the fact that Chris Gayle was an opener. Nicholas Pooran was started batting in the middle order, lower middle order for the West Indies, right? So, and of course, it's T20 cricket. So usually there is just a limited amount of balls that a batsman is able to face during that batting that low in the order, compared to the opener batting, but starting batting from the beginning of the innings, right? So I'll share their stats, to start, right? Because they actually have similar stats when you look at it. So in terms of Nicholas Pooran, I'm gonna share the stats now. So Nicholas Pooran, so Chris Gayle, so let me start with Chris Gayle, right? So Chris Gayle played a total of 75 innings for the West Indies, and he scored 1,899 runs at an average of 27.92. Nicholas Pooran, so far, at the time of recording of this video, he's played 88 innings for the West Indies, and his runs total was 2,141. at an average of 27.44. Right. So as far as average is concerned, they're quite similar. Chris Gayle does have the edge in terms of average batting average, right? But it's just a slight edge, less than 0.5, so we can say they both average 27 if you want to put it like that, right? So now what I did, right? So let's say they had played the equal amount of innings, right? So let's say Chris Gayle had played 88 innings. Based on his average, it would mean that Chris Gayle would have scored 2,261 runs, right? And which would put him just about 19 runs more than Nicholas Pooran, right? So it's not that huge of a difference. You would say, actually, based on that, you would say they're actually similar as it relates to their performance for the West Indies, right? In terms of, if you compare strike rate, because strike rate is also something that is huge in T20 cricket, very important. They have similar strike rates as well. Chris Gayle's strike rate is 137.5 compared to Nicholas Pooran's strike rate is 137.77. So Nicholas Pooran has the slight edge as it relates to strike rate in T20 internationals, but it's similar. Just like the average, I'm not going to give either batsman, the edge based on that, right? There's not really a clear difference there in either average or strike rate, right? It's very similar. So based on that, now let's talk about the boundaries hit, right? So Chris Gayle, in his 75 innings, he hit 124 fours and 158 sixes. No, 124 sixes and 158 fours. Compared to Nicholas Pooran, in his 88 innings, he's hit 139 sixes and 144 fours. Right. So the question I have for you, which of them would you say is the better six hitter? Right? Would you say Nicholas Pooran is the better six hitter or Chris Gayle? I would say so in today's game, in the current T20 game, Nicholas Pooran is definitely the best six hitter or the most consistent six hitter, right? He has hit the most sixes in the current T20 format. Heinrich Klaasen is close as well. Obviously you have Andre Russell who is very powerful and on his day can clear the boundary with ease. But in terms of consistency and the amount, Nicholas Pooran, is at the top of the table in terms of that as well, right? So between a Nicholas Pooran and a Chris Gayle in T20 internationals, who would you say is the better six hitter? Personally, and it's they. I would say there will not necessarily a bias, but just knowing what Chris Gayle can do and seeing what he did, I would still give the edge to Chris Gayle as far as it comes to six hitting. Yes, I would still give Chris Gayle the edge, right? Because so again, if you look at the stats, and so from his 75 innings, he hit 124, right? So if he had played the same amount of innings as Nicholas Pooran, he would also be based on if you just average it out in terms of sixes per innings, he would also be ahead of Nicholas Pooran in that category. So, and then just overall, knowing what Chris Gayle did, like I said, I'm not going to use their overall T20 stats in franchise cricket to compare them in a sense, but it's hard to make this video and not take it into consideration, right? And I know it'll be hard for you, the viewers, as well. So I still would conclude that Chris Gayle is the better six hitter. But Nicholas Pooran still has a lot of time in his career. And if he continues on the trajectory that he's currently on, at the end of his career, we might have to revisit this video or even revisit this statement and maybe do another video comparing them, over the length of their career. But right now, Chris Gayle is definitely the better six hitter, better boundary hitter, but Nicholas Pooran is up there as well. So as far as international T20 cricket goes, they are in terms of their stats, it's very similar. right? Where Chris Gayle has the edge though is this. Chris Gayle, he has um Chris Gayle has um two T20 World Cup championships, right? Chris Gayle has two T20 World Cup championships. Nicholas Pooran doesn't have any as yet. He hasn't won any T20 World Cups. So when considering, the greatest batsman for West Indies, you also have to take that into consideration as well. It would be like the LeBron James and Michael Jordan conversation. It before LeBron James won a NBA championship, that was held over the head of LeBron James, right? What has he won? Right, so that will always be something that's held against Nicholas Pooran until the West Indies are able to win a T20 World Cup championship with him in the team or with him leading the team, right? So from that standpoint, Chris Gayle has the edge there, because he obviously they've won two T20 World Cups, but stats wise, they're pretty close. They're very equal, right? In terms of their stats now. So like I said, I'll just mention it, just to I'll mention their stats in overall franchise T20 cricket, right? So Chris Gayle has the clear edge here, but again, you also have to take into consideration, like you did for the T20 internationals, you have to take into consideration where the player batted, right? Chris Gayle, always been an opener, so obviously he'll have the opportunity to play more balls. And Chris Gayle has played more games than Nicholas Pooran in T20 franchise cricket as well, right? So in franchise cricket, Chris Gayle, he's played 455 innings, right? Scoring a whopping 14,562 runs, right? That's just it's unheard of. It's crazy, right? At an average of 36.22. Right, compare that to a Nicholas Pooran, who's played 328 innings. He's scored 7,703 runs at an average of 28.21. Right? So Chris Gayle has the clear edge there. Now, if like similar to what I did for Chris Gayle, if Nicholas Pooran, had played the same amount of innings that Chris Gayle, played in T20 franchise cricket, right, based on his current average, right, Nicholas Pooran would have 11,285 runs. So Chris Gayle would still, have a 3,000 run lead on him in that regard, right? So Chris Gayle definitely has the edge as far as T20 franchise cricket goes, right? But what I did note though, and is their strike rate, right? Nicholas Pooran actually has a better strike rate in T20 franchise cricket than Chris Gayle. Not that it matters much because, like I said, you always have to consider how many balls the batsman is likely to face, right? And obviously, the more balls you face, the more likely it is for your strike rate to be lower, right? So Nicholas Pooran's strike rate in T20, and in T20 franchise cricket is 147.48, while Chris Gayle's strike rate is 144.75. Right. But in terms of boundaries hit, sixes and fours, Chris Gayle has the clear edge there as well. So Chris Gayle, definitely the best six hitter in T20 franchise cricket history, no doubt. Right. So he's hit 1,556 sixes in T20 franchise cricket. Compare that to Nicholas Pooran 537. And if Nicholas Pooran had batted the same amount of innings that Chris Gayle played, he would have 708. Right? Now, Nicholas Pooran's trajectory is on the rise, right? So maybe by the time, and he's batting higher up in the order now for all of his franchise teams, right? So which means that he will have the opportunity to face more balls. So in terms of his average, in terms of his boundaries hit, whether it's sixes or fours, the fact that he's facing more balls, it's likely that will increase. So let's see where Nicholas Pooran is, by the time he gets to the amount of innings that Chris Gayle has played. and then we can make the comparison as far as T20 franchise cricket, right? I just wanted to share those stats with you because, in my opinion, Chris Gayle is the greatest T20 batsman ever, right? What he's done in T20 franchise cricket, it's not been equaled by anyone, right? And it's not just, let's say, random T20 franchise leagues. The biggest. So you're talking about the IPLs, the Big Bash, and other T20 franchise leagues. He's done what Chris Gayle has done. It's not been equaled by anyone, and honestly, it's hard to see it being equaled by anyone. So Chris Gayle is definitely the greatest T20 batsman in my book, in my opinion. But again, this is just my opinion. You definitely share your thoughts in the comment section and let me know. But going back to the T20 internationals, they're, as far as West Indies go, I would say they're even. It's close, but Chris Gayle, I would give Chris Gayle the edge just because of the fact that he's won two T20 World Cup trophies for the West Indies. And that is what would give Chris Gayle the edge over Nicholas Pooran as far as it relates to the greatest T20 batsman for the West Indies, when they're in West Indian colors. So, but definitely share your thoughts in the comment section. Let me know what you think, which of these players you think is the greatest T20 batsman for the West Indies. And share your thoughts on anything else that I mentioned in the video as well. As always, thank you for tuning in. Do remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed as yet. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you in the next video.